50 years ago, in the spring of 1968, an estimated 3,000 protesters came to Washington, D.C. and set up camp along the National Mall. They were seeking economic justice and called it Resurrection City. They stayed for 6 weeks. Well, the group had arrived from across the United States in what was called a Poor People's Campaign, an effort that was originally organized by Dr. Martin Luther King before his assassination in April of 1968. The events were documented by producer Edward Scherer in a rarely seen 20-minute film titled On the Case. We're joining here in our studios with his wife, Ann. Thank you for being with us. Why did your late husband produce this film?
He thought it was a very interesting and dramatic event that people would come so far to the nation's capital. And he wanted to illustrate some of the issues that would make people get up, get together, pack their things, take their children, get on buses, and come all the way up here to an event that they really weren't sure how it would end. But they were driven, and he wanted to make a film that reflected that emotion and that drive.
You lived through this period. You have seen the film. Does it do that?
I did not see Resurrection City myself. I was back up at home looking after 2 babies. And I feel, in looking at the film again, I feel that it did capture the time. And one of the things that came across to me as I looked at it again was that it did not just show one point of view, that there were many points of view and many voices and many issues that came across because of the way it was put together.
It chronicles really the divisions in the country between black and white America, the civil rights movement, the assassination of Dr. King. Do you think it captures the moment?
I think it captures an underlying feeling of fear and concern about the future. That first few months of 1968 was so dramatic and so upsetting. The death of Martin Luther King, the riots, the death of Bobby Kennedy. And you'll notice in the film that there are lots of people talking about no violence. Be very careful, no violence, we're not going to have violence. And then some people, because of the anonymity of voice recording rather than actual interviews, expressing somewhat more militant views. So there was a tension, I think. And I think there was a tension in the time, and that this little film picks it up.
A national audience will have a chance to see it in just a moment, but
Good.
How did your husband put it together, and what do you think the audience will take away after watching it?
In putting it together, he and his colleagues spent eight weeks and 27 hours of tape recording, voice recording, and of course filming. They went to Mississippi, they were on the buses, they filmed the buses, and all the way through to Resurrection City. Use of the audio tape rather than an interview on camera, my husband felt would make people more willing to express what they really felt, because they wouldn't be tied to a voice and a face and an individual. It'd be anonymous, like radio. And if you'll notice in the film, there are 5, altogether there are 6 on-camera interviews. The first 5 are with young people in the South, talking about their lives and their condition.
I want a job with flexibility. I want a job that will, meet my ability. I want a job that when, maybe when I can move up a little further, then I can make the decision about whether or not I should be in another department or something like this.
And there's one white man interviewed as well, representing his point of view. And then at the end, you have the 2 men sitting on by the reflecting pool, including one of which is my husband. And just talking about the the tension and the problems and the difficulties that were reflected in that march and that campaign, and the hope that they could be solved peacefully.
And this is a film that you thought originally was lost.
I did. I certainly thought the copies were lost. We had some paperwork, as you see, as we had the script, and we had some promotional materials because he'd hoped initially that he might be able to distribute it to schools as a talking point footage for civics classes. But I did not know that an actual film still existed, no.
How did you find it?
I was cleaning my basement. And I was cleaning out some of the boxes that had been down there for some time, and other boxes had gone on top. And I found it. I was thrilled because I wanted to show the film to my children and my grandchildren as examples of Ed's work. And then I thought to myself, oh my goodness, but it's in 16 millimeter. Who's got a 16 millimeter projector anymore? So after various options were discussed, we decided to have it put on DVD.
Why do you think it was not widely distributed at the time?
Well, I think that people were a little tired of it. They wanted some of it, they just wanted it to go away. They didn't want to think about the issues and the tensions of 1968. Some people, may have felt that it was just too incendiary to be in schools, that there might be arguments, that teachers might be uncomfortable with it. I think it was too close to the time that it happened.
Your husband died in 1997.
Yes.
The film was produced in 1968. During that 19-year time period, did he talk much about it?
No, not really. I mean, he gave it all he had at the time. And after that, he went on to other things. He made other documentaries. He made some films about space. He did a number of industrials in the area, worked for different associations, had a good life.
Final question, the title, On the Case. Explain.
Was a phrase that was being used right at the very beginning, when the young man is on the I want to say walkie-talkie. I don't know if that's the right term anymore, but he's talking and he's saying, "On the case, brother," meaning I'm on it, I'm doing it, I'm working on it.
On the case, brother.
And that was, I think, the phrase that my husband chose to really encompass the intent of the whole film.
Edward Scherer, thank you very much for being with us here on C-SPAN 3's American History TV.
My pleasure.
And from 1968, that 20-minute documentary in its entirety, part of Real America, the work of Edward Scherer, On the Case.